I think the Holy Spirit's the nomos or something. I mean, it's all very strange doctrine. We don't believe in it. Isa alayhi salam was Abdullah wa Rasuluhu. He's his slave and he's the servant of Allah. And the word is not the logos. The word is kun. He was, and that was it. So he mentions in there, what's that? Kalimatullah. We have to believe that. Allah says that he was Kalimatullah alqaha fi Maryam. We believe that. And traditionally when a Christian became Muslim, they would have them testify to that. They would actually have the Christian testify to that. They would say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah wa ashhadu anna Isa Kalimatullah alqaha fi Maryam abduhu wa rasuluhu. To renounce his Christian belief that he was the Son of God. And obviously you can see again later in the Abyssinian period when the Najashi radiallahu anhu is confronted by the Abyssinians about his statement that he believed that Jesus was just a abd as opposed to being the son.
When you said it, Christians say that, you mean the early community?
No, the first Christians didn't believe that. But this becomes the official doctrine of the Christian church in 325. That it's 325 years, Christian era or AD, whatever you want to say. It's after 325 years, a long time after. And a lot can happen in 325 years. So, anyway, he's just got this idea that there was here, it's on page 17. When he talks about the Quraysh, he says, the sanctuary of Abraham, and they were made welcome like all the rest. Moreover, one Christian had been allowed and even encouraged to paint an icon of the Virgin Mary and the Christ child on the inside of the wall Kaaba, where it sharply contrasted with all the other paintings. I mean, how do you know it sharply contrasted with all the other paintings? I mean, that is a really strange thing to say. When I read that, that comes from Titus Burckhardt, and he doesn't footnote that. I mean, he footnotes most of the other things where he puts Ibn Ishaq or something. Anyway, I mean, he's in his 80s. He's done a lot for Islam. I'm not in any way trying to detract from him, and I really have respect. He has a lot of scholarship, very authoritative in Arabic, taught in Egypt for 20 years. And I've heard from people that have been with him that he's a very, very pious human being. So I'm not in any way, I'm just pointing these things out because I do think they need to be pointed out. Right? I mean, every book is going to have mistakes except the Quran. It's the nature. One sheikh, I was with a sheikh once and somebody asked him, Abu Talib al-Khiyar, who wrote a tafsir of Quran, and somebody asked him, if you were on a desert island, you can only have one book, which book would it be? And he said, the Jalalain. Right? And he said, but aren't there some mistakes in the Jalalain? And Imam Talib al-Khiyar immediately said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never allow any other book but his book to be free of mistakes. So, there's going to be mistakes. If they're big ones, I'm going to point them out, like those, because I think those are pretty serious mistakes. If they're small ones, I probably won't notice them. And if I do, it's not, I don't think it's, unless it's important, it's not. So you can see then, just in this section on the family division, there's a lot of trouble. Now there's an interesting point that he brings out, and this is about Zayd ibn Amr. Zayd ibn Amr, who is related to, he's related to Umar ibn al-Khattab in that his, Umar's father and their brothers, right? There's a relationship there. And Zayd ibn Amr was a Hanif. He rejected the eating of carrion. He wouldn't worship the gods. His own brother persecuted him, right? They're half brothers, Khattab. He persecuted him mercilessly, chased him out of Mecca. He used to actually live in the Zawahir, right? They had the Batha, which is where the honored Quraysh lived. and then they had the Quraysh al-Zawahir outside. So what happens is he's chased out. He eventually leaves and begins to sojourn in different places. He travels to Iraq and to get to the truth. Finally, he hears that there's a prophet going to come where he was from. So he sets out and he dies on the way. And it's important because Sa'id has a son who is Sa'id, who's married bin Zayd, who's married to Fatima, who's the sister, right? This is the sister of Umar ibn al-Khattab. So he's one of the first people that become Muslim. So and then he mentions also, which is important in his story, of Umayyah ibn Khalaf and Ubay were mustahziyun, both of them. One of the things that Ubay does is he takes some decayed bones. He's on the path. There are some bones that are kind of crumbling. He picks them up and he says, you say that these are going to be revived, and he crushes them in his hand and then blows them over the Prophet ﷺ. And so he said, "Man yuhyi al-'idham wa hiya ramim." That's what he asked. "Man yuhyi al-'idham wa hiya ramim." And then he crushed them, blew them into the Prophet ﷺ. And then Allah said, "Yahyiha alladhi ansha'aha awwala marra." Right? The one who made them the first time. Anasiya khalqa, did he forget his own creation? You didn't exist and now you exist. So just like those bones are dead, they can be brought back to life just like you were brought to life and you were nothing. Right? So a lot of things were happening. One of the things, one of these mustahziyun, the Prophet ﷺ was walking a pathway and he took this mud and flung it on the Prophet ﷺ, and it got in his hair. When he arrived to his house, one of his daughters came crying, taking it off, and he said, "Let's just keep on it. Don't cry." He said, "Inna Allaha mani'un Quraysh minni." Allah is going to protect me from the Quraysh, whatever they do. In other words, these are all. And here's the important thing also to remember. Well, we'll get when we get to the thing. He mentions about the hour. I think that's important. That we're reminded, and I think he makes a very good point here, is that these people before the revelation, these are good, upright people in the community. They're the leaders. They're the people that people look up to. They were generous, they were noble, they had nasab, they fed people, they took care of the needy, they gave siqayah to the hujjaj. They did all these things and everybody thought they were great, honorable people. Right? What happens? When the revelation comes out, their true character shows up. In other words, what this deen did is it separated the chaff, right, from the wheat. It separated it so that everybody could see it. And now you can imagine how shocking this was. To see somebody like Abu al-Hakam, who they really looked up to, and now he's behaving like a child. Petulant child, the way he's treating these people. And they all recognize it's bad, because Abu al-Bakhtari and Zum'a, and I mean, they were shocked when they have this munabadha of the Prophet ﷺ and his family. I mean, he was doing things that it was not in their honor system. So they're not only kuffar now, but they're bad kuffar. I mean, they're losing their status amongst the people, because people are really seeing them for what they are. Now, one of the things that the Quraysh did is they sent some of their people to go to the Jews, because they said, "Look, they're the people of the book. We're not the people of the book. So let's go ask them." Because they did believe in Ibrahim. I mean, don't forget that. They did have a sense of religion. They had a deen. So they go and they ask the Jews, "What should we do?" They say, "Ask him 3 questions and see if he can answer them, he's a prophet. If he can't answer them, he's not a prophet." So they go. They tell him to ask him about the sleepers, this cave, Ashab al-Kahf. Told him to ask him about the man who goes to the furthest east and the west, Dhul Qarnayn. And then they told him to ask him about the ruh and see what he says. So they go, and the Prophet ﷺ says, "I'll tell you tomorrow." And he doesn't say, "Insha'Allah." The next day they come, let's hear it. Nothing's come to the Prophet ﷺ. So they start laughing. They say, you don't know the answer. They're waiting. He points out a really good point, which is, for some of these people, they started thinking, maybe he's not making this up. Because he can't just produce it. Now, one of the things they knew about poets is a poet, they're poets. You wanted a qasida? Let's hear something. That was the muse. They could just produce. And they're still, I've met some scholars in West Africa. They can write a poem some of them just extemporaneously. Right? So they understood divination. They understood when they went to the diviner, he could just come up with something. He would tell them. They didn't need to wait or anything. So here's the Prophet ﷺ is waiting. Why? Because it's not from him. And finally, after a period of time, the revelation comes down, Surah Al-Kahf, and explains to them about the sleepers. Some say, there is a place in Greece in which there is a cave, and outside of the cave, there's a sign. You can go, and it's called the Seven Sleepers of Ephesus. It's in Greece. And this was not a story known to the Quraysh, by the way. It was not in there. They knew some of the stories of the Persians, and they obviously had a lot of their own Ayyam al-Arab, stories of their chieftains and things like that. But they didn't know this story. It wasn't a story that they knew. So the Prophet ﷺ told them the story. And not only was the story revealed, but with great detail, how they were inside. Had you seen them inside the cave? The fact that there was a dog there. They didn't ask them about the dog. The fact there was a dog there. The fact that how the sun was moved. So obviously the Jews, how did he know all that? Where did he get that information? And then Dhul Qarnayn. Again, he's told about Dhul Qarnayn, who he was, where he went, what he did, the wall. And then he's also about the ruh. He gives the answer the Jews knew that only the prophet could give, which is يسألونك عن الروح خلاص قل الروح من أمر ربي. The ruh is from the command of my Lord. وما أوتيتم من العلم إلا قليلا. You've only been given a little bit of knowledge. So he answers the three questions. The Quraysh go and they say, what should we do? Now the Jews have asked the Prophet ﷺ, are you a prophet to the Arabs? He said, no, I'm a prophet to the Arabs and to you. They said, we don't accept that. Right? So then they tell and this is a real deception, because Abu Sufyan asked them with, expecting some trust here. And they tell him, no, stay on your deen. It's better than what he's offering you. So idolatry is better than that there should be a universal claim to prophecy. And then he mentions about Bilal, and this is actually earlier on, so you have to be careful with the book. Umayyah, who's killed by Bilal later on. He comes back again. Bilal radiallahu anhu was a Habashi slave, and he becomes Muslim. And so Umayyah takes him out, puts a huge rock on him in the heat of the sun, which if you've been in Arabia, you know it's torture. That is torture. And Bilal radiallahu anhu says, Ahad. That's his only reply. He keeps telling him, say Ukfur, just say you don't believe in it. Believe in Lat and Uzza, I'll take the rock off, we can go home. And he just keeps saying, Ahad. Again, this, what we're being told here is, look, these people, this was not a passing fancy. These people were totally committed to this deen. They were completely committed to the Prophet ﷺ. They weren't going to waver. And that's really important to understand that. Despite the fact that they're being tortured, despite the fact that all these wretched things are happening to them, they're absolutely confirmed in their faith. Now, because the persecutions are beginning to increase, there's a difference of opinion. Was the hijrah before the hisar, the sanctions on Bani Hashim and Bani Muttalib, or was it after? So there's two different opinions. He's going by Ibn Ishaq's opinion, which is that it was before. And So what happens is, because all of these troubles are happening, the Prophet ﷺ is commanded to tell some people to make hijrah. And this is establishing the idea of hijrah now, because hijrah is a new concept coming to these people. The idea of seeking refuge with your deen, to go to a better place for the sake of your religion. Because there's no Darul Islam. Mecca is not Darul Islam, and Habasha is not Darul Islam. But Habasha is more just than Mecca. And so the Prophet ﷺ tells them, there is a king in Ethiopia who does not oppress his people. So go there and worship Allah there. So they set out, and there was about 80 of them, just over 80. Some of the big Sahaba were with that group. Uthman ibn Affan goes with the daughter of the Prophet, Ruqayya. Mus'ab ibn Umair, who's going to be very important in the Medinan experience. Abdurrahman bin Auf goes. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib goes. Ja'far, who's direct. Zubair ibn Awam, the Hawari of the Prophet ﷺ, very important person. So some very, very big Sahaba are going. Now these people, if you look at them, did not need to go. They had protectors. Uthman had protectors. Uthman was not being persecuted in that same way. I mean, obviously they're all affected by it, but they weren't being persecuted like the slaves were, like the poor people, some of the women, people to look after them. Abu Talib was still powerful. They respected that, because see, what you have to understand here is that if Abu Talib is a sheikh of the Quraysh, and he says, I'm protecting Abu Salama, or I'm protecting the Prophet ﷺ, or I'm protecting this person, and if they don't adhere to that, and they mock that, then what does that do? What happens? Social order disintegrates. It's the social contract. In other words, we're all agreeing that we're going to behave certain ways, and if we don't behave these ways, we're going to destroy the order that we have. And so they're honoring this, and even this is why Al-Walid ibn Mughira gives protection to the Muslims. So even the mushrikeen were giving protection to the Muslims. And you have to understand, it's not that they were not supportive of Islam, they were against Islam. It had to do with their jahiliyyah again. This is why they're supporting them, not for the sake of Islam. And this is why the Prophet went to Utbah when he got upset with the Quraysh, and he said, you only did this for the sake of your father. You didn't do it for the sake of Allah or for the sake of me. Your anger was just for the sake of your fathers. You see, and this is why they got angry. It's very different. So he sends them to Ethiopia, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They go at Habasha, Ard al-Habasha. Now, what happens is the Quraysh send Abdullah ibn Abi Rabi'a and Amr ibn al-As. They're reasonably young, but they're very big men and clever. Especially Amr ibn al-As, brilliant. And his brilliance shows up later. He's a general of Sayyidina Umar, extremely brilliant. He ends up fighting with Muawiyah against Sayyidina Ali. He was a very, very clever person. So he goes, he's from the clan of Saham, from Quraysh. He goes, and what the Quraysh say, look, when they find out they've gone, because they've gone, they didn't all go out at once. They went in a way that the Quraysh were unaware of what's happening. Once they get wind of it, they send immediately Amr ibn al-As, Ibn Abi Rabi'a, and they tell them, bring gifts. They bring them all these things that they have there, pelts and things, to take to his bishops and the generals. And so they send them, they go there, and they go to the generals first. They give them all these gifts. So this is like, this is an old Arab tradition. Bakshish, right? Jahili tradition. So they go, they give them all their perks, and then they finally go to the Najashi and they tell them, you've got some people that have come here seeking refuge with you. They've left us. And then they say, we're their families, their fathers, their uncles, their relatives. They've obviously gone off the loose end. We want to bring them back and straighten things out. And Najashi says, I have to hear them first, what they say. So first he tries to do it diplomatically. When they come before them, they choose Ja'far to speak. Now Ja'far is extremely eloquent. He's also incredibly beautiful. Right? A very handsome man. The Prophet ﷺ said that he was the most like him in his physical form and in his character. So you can imagine what greater what greater stature to have than that by the witnessing of the Prophet ﷺ. So they're the one they put before him. And this is also, the ulama use this as a proof that you always put forward your best person. This is the hikmah of presenting something, is you should put forward the most eloquent, somebody who has physical pleasantry. This is what they call a personable person, who's physically and also in character attractive to people. Because he goes and Najashi says, tell me what's going on. And he says, Kunna qawman ahla jahiliyatin. We were a people in Jahiliyyah. Na'bud al-asnam wa na'kul al-mayta. We used to worship asnam and eat carrion. Wa na'ti al-fawahish. And we did improprieties. Wa naqta al-arham. And we used to sever our kin ties. Wa nusi al-jiwar. And we were bad to our neighbors and things like this. Wa ya'kul al-qawi al-da'if. And amongst us, it was the strong that ate the weak. So he's describing Jahiliyyah now. Right? وَكُنَّا عَلَى ذَلِكَ حَتَّى بَعَثَ اللَّهُ فِينَا رَسُولًا. And we were just like that until Allah sent amongst us a messenger. نَعْلَمُ مِنْهُ نَسَبَهُ. نَعْلَمُ مِنَّا نَسَبَهُ وَحَسَبَهُ وَعَفَافَهُ وَصِدْقَهُ وَأَمَانَتَهُ. We know him. We know where he came from. We know his truthfulness, his trustworthiness. We know his forbearance. We know all of these good qualities about him. We know these things. فَدَعَانَا إِلَى اللَّهِ. He called us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَنَهَانَ الْأَوْثَانِ وَالْأَحْجَارِ. He kept us from worshipping all these stones and rocks and all of these things. So he's telling us that he commanded us to say Allah is one. And then he goes on, he told us to Sirat al-Raham, and he tells them all the benefits of Islam. And here's a Christian who can understand these things because he has a deen. Whereas the Quraysh didn't have a deen like this. They didn't have these mabadi. It was all Jahiliyyah. So here he's explaining to him, the Najashi's recognizing this. This is Christianity. This is what we're told to do too. Right? So he sees it. And then, the brilliant man that he was, he recites to him the beginning of Surah Maryam. Not only did he tell us all these, but he also honors Isa alayhi salam and tells us that Isa is to be honored and his mother Maryam is to be honored. When the Najashi hears this, he begins to weep. He weeps first from hearing the actual recitation. And then the Habashi language is Amharak, which there is some similar. So he probably could have understood some of what was being said, but it's a Hamitic Semitic language. It has Semitic elements and Hamitic elements. So he would have some, like an Arab hearing Persian, he's probably going to hear words that he recognizes. But then he hears the translation and he weeps again. And he says, well, he took a stick he had and he put it down and he said, this and what Isa came doesn't go past this stick. In other words, it's exactly what Isa brought. And he said, هَذَا مِن مِشْكَاتٍ وَاحِدًا. This is from the same lamp. It's from one lamp. Right? So in other words, he's confirming, which is important. Now here's Amr ibn al-As. It's all been thwarted. Not only that, they've wasted all that money buying all those presents and things. So he's really upset. Now Amr, being the clever person that he was, he's not going to give up. He goes back, he's thinking, I've got it. Let's tell them what they really think about Jesus. Which is an indication that Amr knew something about Christianity. So he goes back and he tells him, Najashi, before you decide to let them stay, you have to know something. They say that Jesus was a abd. Now abd, obviously, it's a low thing, right? In their jahiliyyah. Right? They obviously don't understand that even in Christianity, to be a servant of God, it's all throughout the Bible. I mean, even the New Testament's filled with the servants of God. Right? Paul says, be good servant of God. If you look the word up in the Greek, it means slave. So the Christians weren't averse to that idea of a slave. A slave of God was an honorable thing. And so they go, and he calls them back, and he says, what do you say about Isa? And they say, we say that he was what our Prophet said about him. In other words, we're not making this up. Our Prophet told us he's Abdullah wa Rasuluhu wa Karimatuhu alqaha fi Maryam. He said Isa alayhi salam didn't say anything more about himself than that. So they go back completely despondent now. And it's interesting that according to some of the transmissions, the Ethiopians are really upset about this because they feel that he's changed religion. So they go to him And he finds it out, and he presents them. He says, "What's wrong?" And they say, "We trusted you, and now we're worried that you've changed the religion." Right? That clock's wrong, right? Yeah. All right. What time is it?
12:15.
11:45. Okay. So he tells them that you've changed the religion, and what he does, according to Ibn Ishaq, he takes a parchment, writes on it, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu Muhammad Rasulullah, wa ashhadu anna Isa Abdullah wa Rasuluhu wa kalimatu alqahu bi Maryam." He folds it, puts it in his breast, and then when he goes out, they say to him, "You said that you believe what they said about Isa." He said, "What do you say about Isa?" And they say, "We say that he was Ibn Allah." And he said, "Ana usaddiqu hada," and he pointed to his heart like that. Now the Prophet ﷺ prayed. He is the one who told them news of his death in Medina. Na'ahu Rasulullah ﷺ. He was given news by the angels. And then Najashi's body was brought before the Messenger of Allah in Medina by the angels, and he prayed on it, which some ulama say it was Salat al-Ghaib. Imam Malik says it wasn't Salat al-Ghaib, it was Salat al-Hadir, that he was present there before him. And so he prayed on Najashi. So Najashi is considered a believer. He's a mu'min. Right? He did not meet the Prophet, so he doesn't go under the category of Sahabi. But he is considered a tabi'i. He met the Sahaba and he believed in the Messenger of Allah. So that's important to do, to understand. Now, the next section here is about the Islam of Umar. Everybody knows this story. It's a great story. Nu'aym ibn Abdullah met Sayyidina Umar. He said, "Where were you?" And I think he pointed out something really important about Sayyidina Umar, and that is Sayyidina Umar was somebody who was not like the Mustahzi'un. He was a young man, 26, but he was very, very devout. And he was from the Bani Adi, the Khattab family. They were Qudat. They were judges amongst the Quraysh. This was their traditional role amongst Quraysh. They were judges. And so he was somebody who had a deep sense of justice. And he felt that injustices were being perpetrated against their tradition. So he goes, he's coming into his own, 26. He's fed up with all this. He's going to end it all. He's just going to go and kill the Prophet ﷺ, and that's the end of it. And he's a very powerful man. So Nu'aym meets him on the road. He sees him. "Where are you going, Umar?" Because Umar looks mad. He said, I'm going to go kill this man. Nu'aym is a Muslim. Umar doesn't know it. So he's trying to think, what should I do? What should I do? He tells him, "Why don't you take care of your family first?" Now he reveals something Umar doesn't know. But he does it in order to buy time to go and warn the Prophet ﷺ. So here's an example in Sharia of lesser of two evils.